Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and this video we're breaking down. Coming back after probably the most intense and brutal episode of the series so far, episode 6 doesn't offer much relief. The Viltrumite War is fully on and the Coalition is desperately trying to hold them back without any of the Invincible boys. As we saw, they were stranded on a desolate planet and Mark was at death's door with his gut all over the floor. And I'm not a rapper. Is Invincible still alive? Will the Coalition be able to survive? Will Thragg finally kiss Argall's skull? Well, let's get into it. Now, a lot of this episode is directly ripped from the comics, so it's packed with Easter eggs and references. As always though, there's a lot of new things for the series that dive deeper into some of the characters. Throughout this video, we'll be recapping the story and breaking down the differences from the comics. But before we get started, if you want to catch up on the source material for the episode and see how it was adapted for the entry, then you'll want to check out issues 73 and 74. If you want to show the world how much you love the series and our channel as well, then we also have our t-shirts inspired by the show at the merch store below. Some big discounts on there, all the ones you can see behind me as well, and it'll make you look better than I look right now.
If Nolan, Mark, and Oliver are alive, they will find their way to us.
Now we start the episode in the aftermath of last week with Thetis meeting with the other world leaders of the Coalition. He gives them the lowdown on the current state of the Viltrumites and the weapons Alan and Nolan collected in order to fight them. We see a group of Coalition scientists working on them and also focus on the Scourge virus, which will be there if things get too hairy. Thetis tells the other leaders that it's time to finally end the Viltrumites once and for all, and he launches a full-on assault. Now I love how we mirror this and also see that Thragg's giving his own war speech to the Viltrumites. He says how the Coalition doesn't have an ass chance in hell to stop them, and they'll pretty much squash them like the insects they are. Also got so many flashes of Foundation, and Lee Pace of course also plays the Emperor in that show. We then see the Viltrumites launch their own army of Crash soldiers who are species that they've enslaved. They're preparing to meet the Coalition on the battlefield, and we get a shot of an army marching up a ramp. This reminded me a lot of the end of Attack of the Clones, where Yoda's basically like, begun the Clone Wars has. In another clear nod to Star Wars as well, we see a table with the fleet. This is very similar to the table in A New Hope, where the rebels make their attack on the Death Star. Now we watch as the surprise comes to Thragg, as the guys are already there, surprise motherfucker, and they then begin their attack on the Viltrumite fleet. With a big space laser battle. Pew 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 pew! Thragg is genuinely shocked at the Coalition's resistance, and very pissed they would even dare to stand against them. To him, they don't understand the prosperity that he believes the Viltrumites will bring to the galaxy. We also see that he's having this conversation with the broken skull of Emperor Argall, which is something he also does in the comics. He promises he will not fail his mission of Viltrum taking its rightful place as the kings of the universe, and yeah, Thragg has fully given in to drinking the Viltrumite Kool-Aid. His little speech here as well shows how most of the Viltrumites genuinely believe that what they're doing is a good thing. This is something that Nolan's mentioned numerous times when talking about his decision to go against the Empire, and we see it's something that he's still struggling to accept. And this plays out pretty much the same way in the comics, except that the Viltrumites take Thetis and the Coalition by surprise and attack Telescara immediately. But we'll see that later on. They bring across a lot of the members from the comics though, although the screens are displayed in appear slightly different. But with the Viltrumite War officially started, we cut back to the planet we left Mark dying on last episode and see that Nolan is making a fresh grave. Oh no! But hold your tears, yeah, you weakling, because it's just a fake out, and we learn that the grave is for Conquest, who I was also crying about. Nolan believes he still deserves some type of respect for his devotion to the Viltrumite Empire, and though he was evil, he was a nice guy and a great man. In his eyes, mate, before you start with the cancel heavy spoilers stuff. Stop it! Stop it! However, it does show that he understands why Conquest was the way he was, and still fully hasn't shed his Viltrumite conditioning. As we saw, Conquest was also extremely lonely and depressed, and probably had more in common with Nolan beyond just being extremely destructive. On the flip side of this, we see Oliver's not having any of this bullshit. He says that Conquest was a monster that tried to kill him, and that Nolan didn't see what he did to them on Earth. To pour salt into the wound even more, he mentions that people hate him almost as much as they do Omni-Man. The scene is expanded a bit more in the comics though, and Nolan explains that everything Conquest did was in service of the Viltrumites, and that in a way, that made him a better man than he is. It shows the parallel between both Nolan and Conquest, and how both of them believed that what they were doing on behalf of the Empire was just, with Nolan still feeling guilty for his betrayal. We then see that Mark is still somehow alive and that Nolan and Oliver have just put his guts back in place so he can heal, which Nolan says could take months. This sends Oliver into a complete spiral though, as he's trapped on a desolate planet with his idiot dad, while a war for the universe rages on without them. Plus he ages at like super speed, so the lad's gonna lose some of the best years of his teens. He's even growing a beard by the end, which is a better one than mine, to be fair. Oliver breaks down though and just wants Mark to wake up. He says that he wishes he was really... And this all comes straight from the comics, but there, Oliver and Nolan don't have this beef with each other. They just take the opportunity to have some father-son bonding time and eat space bugs while Mark lies half dead in the corner, which we will see a bit of shortly. So, as you can probably tell, just like Homelander, I am getting older and feeling it in a lot of ways. Come 6 o'clock, after putting the kids to sleep, I've been absolutely shattered, and, you know, a couple of months ago, my energy across the board was completely tanking. I was struggling to hit my reps at the gym and becoming tired very quickly doing the same things I used to. What a lot of guys don't realise though is that after 30, your testosterone starts dropping about 1% every single year, and it hits a point when you really start to notice it. I wanted to feel sharp, strong and energized again, so I started looking for real solutions. And that's when I found Mars Men. I've been using the tablets for a couple of months now, and Mars Men have me feeling like my younger self again. Now, here's the thing that most people don't talk about. Your body still produces testosterone, but a big portion of it gets locked up behind a protein called SHBG. It's like having money in the bank, but your card is declined. You can't actually use it. Mars Men though is specifically designed to help free up that bound testosterone using natural ingredients. There's no synthetics, no needles, and nothing sketchy. Mars Men includes 8 powerful clinically dosed natural ingredients including Tongat Ali, Shilajit, vitamin D, zinc, boron, and more. It's made in the USA, third-party tested, and backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee. Since taking it, my workouts have been noticeably better, my recovery is faster, and have steady, clean energy from morning to night, without like the jitters that you get with coffee. Thousands of guys are having great results too, with over 91% reporting significantly higher energy levels. The reviews are all on their website that you can go and read now, and also get this amazing deal. If you head to mengotomars.com, our listeners get 50% off for life, plus free shipping and 3 free gifts. That's mengotomars.com, where you can get 50% off plus 3 free gifts at checkout. And after you purchase, they'll also ask you where you heard about them. If you could please support the show and let them know I sent you, I'd really appreciate it. But yeah, go to mengotomars.com and feel like you again. Thanks. We then meet back up with Alan and Tech Jacket. They're still playing video games while stowed away on the side of the Viltrumite ship, basically doing their Empire Strikes Back bit still. During this, they overhear General Craig giving orders for the ship to head to Glacier Prime. And I'm sorry, I keep saying General Craig, and it's in fact General Krieg. But Krieg was actually in the fight last week in the comics, but they changed it out to the mullet guy for the show. And I have to say, mate, you are really working that mullet. But this finally gives Alan an idea for a plan. He hopes that they'll run into the Coalition there and can just hop off the ship to join them, which I am sure it will be that easy. Alan also mentions how the Viltrumites will chop them into tiny pieces and pop out their eyeballs if they're caught, which sounds messed up, but it's also a funny reference to when they did that to him in Season 2. Now this scene with Alan and Tech Jacket is similar to one in issue 73, but they're saved by Space Racer. How, may you ask? How do they do it, Paul? Please tell us. Well, he finds them through a tracker that Alan's hidden away in his suit. Glacier Prime is also a planet later referenced by Thetis in the same issue as a Coalition stronghold after Tech Jacket and Alan return, but we never actually see it. But yeah, this is a bold plan, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him. We then pop back in on Omni-Man and Oliver as Nolan beats the shit out of an alien monster. This eats him, but Nolan just bursts through its chest like a xenomorph. It also is clearly a nod to the end of Men in Black, and this is how Kay kills the cockroach alien in the movie. With his fresh kill, Nolan rings the dinner bell, asking if Oliver's hungry, but he continues giving him the cold shoulder, saying he will never eat that. We then see Omni-Man having dinner alone while Oliver squirts a monster goo into Mark's mouth, which I guess is supposed to heal him, but given the way it looks, I think I would rather you just leave me dead, mate. We get this same shot in the comic though, and in both, Nolan explains that the goo keeps Mark hydrated. Nolan once again tries to get Oliver to chow down on some space bug, but he continues to refuse, and then tells him off again. He says he wishes he could starve to death so he wouldn't be stuck with Nolan. You little shit! The conflict just isn't there between them in the comics, but I think having this here really fleshes out the relationship. We then cut to the next day, where Nolan has decided to give Oliver a bit more stern parenting, and he wakes him up for training. Giving him a chance to let out his frustration, Nolan tells Oliver to show him what he's got, but in doing this, he also kind of embarrasses him. He easily dodges every one of Oliver's shots without barely having to move. Not such a smart ass now, you pesky kid. Having them have this fight in the sky also calls back to how Nolan first trained Mark when he got his powers in season 1. However, this beatdown only makes Oliver angrier, and he reveals that he doesn't just hate Nolan for what he did on Earth, but that he heard what he said to Debbie about his mother Andressa. He literally heard him say that she was a mistake and that he didn't truly love her. Oh shit! This in turn could mean Oliver's a mistake too, and it just adds so much reasoning to why he hates his father. And I take back what I said, Oliver should be meaner to Nolan. Although, you know, people probably can't relate to the superpower stuff, I think a lot of kids will have been in similar situations where they wonder if they were a mistake and if their parents regret them. This just adds an extra level to the pair's dynamic, especially since they're both stuck on this planet. Oliver lays into Nolan about how he idolized him, but as soon as he came back to Earth and saw Mark, he didn't give two shits about him, which Nolan doesn't disagree with. I think it's something like if you have a half sibling and your parent goes off and starts a new family, or hell, goes back to that old one, it's gonna hurt a lot, and it just adds so much depth to the story. Nolan even tells Oliver that he's right, but that he's trying to do his best to make up for it. This shows again how Nolan is owning his mistakes, and he admits that it's harder than he thought it would be. However, this all means absolutely nothing to Oliver, who says it's too late for that and then flies off, dealing with his problems much in the same way that Nolan does. Anyway, at this point, we jump back to Alan and Tech Jacket. The Viltrumite ship arrives to Glacier Prime, where we see their war against the Coalition's in full swing. Seeing the fleet of Coalition ships, Alan and Tech reluctantly stop playing their video game to make their escape. However, they're quickly spotted by Lucan and the mullet Viltrumite. Alan then heroically tosses Tech Jacket to the Coalition fleet to save her. He stays back to face the Viltrumites alone and gives us a round 2 from his solo battle with them in season 2. Not them specifically, but you know what I mean. Now, in case you forgot, Alan is literally the definition of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Every time he gets injured, he heals and comes back down the line tougher than before. Now, while Alan is much stronger this time round and puts up more of a fight, he's still no match for the two Viltrumites. However, before Mullet Viltrumite gives him the signature gut punch, Tech Jacket returns with Space Racer, which kind of plays off the comic rescue. He blows a hole right through Mullet Viltrumite, and he will be missed. He also explodes their ship with his Infinity Ray, and this causes Lucan to bail and fly off into space. Now, I absolutely love this little side quest with Alan and Tech Jacket, and it gives them a bit more solo action than the comics. And just in general, it's cool seeing Space Razor using his Infinity Ray against Viltrumites, because it didn't really happen much in the source material. We do get a similar shot of him blowing a hole through a Viltrumite in issue 75, which looks like Mullet Guy, but don't really see much of it other than that. So I'm glad that we do get to see it in action here, even if he's not dragging the Ragnar on leashes like he is in the comics. But yeah, seeing Mullet Guy drift off dead is hilarious, but I promise again, you will be missed. With Alan and Tech now safe with the Coalition, we find ourselves back with Nolan and Oliver. Oliver has finally decided to try some of Nolan's space bugs, and he actually likes it, loves it actually. This is a nod to the section in the comics where the pair bond, James Bond. Oliver asking for more also comes directly from that, and it's a great moment between father and son. This opens the door for them to finally start working through their issues, but Nolan quickly ruins it by bringing up Andressa. This reminds Oliver why he hates him, and he tells him to keep her name out his damn mouth. Keep my mother's name out your damn mouth, kind of thing, which is a big addition to the comics. With things still tense, they then realize that the goo they've been feeding Mark isn't enough for him to fully heal and go to find something a little bit more hearty. It's here that they come across some space bug eggs, which Nolan says should be perfect. However, Nolan severely underestimates the power of a bug mother's love and is attacked by the Queen space bug, which Nolan says is much stronger than the others. Yeah, no shit. I did wonder if this was another alien reference with like the Queen there, and Oliver comes in to help fight it off. With Nolan coordinating their attack, the father and son team finally start working together and easily defeat the monster. Nolan then goes to finish the job, but it's at this point he's stopped by Oliver. He says that she was just trying to protect her eggs and that she doesn't deserve to die. Oliver clearly has a lot of things and trauma built around mothers, like in Debbie and Andressa, and with Andressa being like a bug mum, it makes sense that he'd protect this bug mother as well. This also brings up the very valid point that if they kill her, she won't be able to lay more eggs and they'll just be in the same position in a couple of days. This shows Omni-Man that there's sometimes a better way to deal with things than just immediately resorting to killing. Now this is a lesson that we saw Oliver learn from Mark last season after killing the Mauler twins. It really shows some growth in the character and how he's changed from the purple little psycho he was last year. Also important to remember as well, Oliver is basically a bug himself. So this bug could be like a distant relative of his. Or maybe he thinks she's cute. And she is definitely Oliver's type, which may sound like a joke, but I'm dead serious and it's something we'll circle back to later. We then see Alan and Tech Jacket make it back to Telescara, where Alan reunites with Talia and his newest BFF Battle Beast. He holds Alan to his promise of more bloodshed, and this is something the pair discuss back in prison. Which Alan is like, dude, not only that, but how about a fucking war? Go nuts, mate. Hit the thumbs up. Alan and Tech then get an update of the current status of the war from Talia and Thetis, which apparently isn't going very well. However, now that he's back, Alan is confident that he and Tech Jacket can turn the tides, with Battle Beast giving a roar of approval off camera.
Well, that is about to change. And don't forget what he said.
We then jump back to the bug planet where we see Nolan feeding Mark the new bug goo he and Oliver got from the Queen Space bug eggs. You can also see that a decent amount of time has passed since we last saw them, with both Mark and Nolan now sporting survival beards. In the book, Omni-Man later clarifies that they've been there for 2 months, so it's a long time to be stuck in the wilderness. And I'm sure people on Earth, like Eve, will be worrying, and obviously she's pregnant as well. So we might see how that pays off when he gets back to Earth. We also see that Oliver and Nolan still aren't on the best of terms, and watches Oliver confronts him again about what he said about his Thraxan mother. Nolan again tries to save his ass and says he was being stupid and didn't want to hurt Debbie even more. He explains how lost he felt when he left Earth and that Andressa and the Thraxans saved him. With their lifespans being so short, they had no time to dwell on the past, and people who made mistakes could work for forgiveness and move on. Though they seem like insignificant bugs with short lives, we see how this altered his perspective. It's a great thing to pick up and expand upon, and it shows that every life is important and you can learn lessons from everything that help you improve. Going to live with them just completely changed who Nolan was, and you realise that there could still be hope for him if he worked hard enough to earn it. Nolan also clarifies that while coming to Thraxa was a mistake because it put the people in danger, Oliver and his mother were never part of that regret. Oliver has every right to hate him though, and he knows that he has completely failed at being a dad for the second time. But he is trying to fix things. This starts to soften Oliver a bit, and he sees that Nolan's being genuine. Finally, he asks him to then tell him a bit more about his mother. Now, like I mentioned before in the comics, Oliver and Nolan don't have any beef with each other and are just having a grand old time together on the bug planet. But they also never really touch upon Andressa or Thraxa either. We do get a similar scene to this with Nolan talking about Debbie, but Andressa is basically never mentioned after her death in the comics. Except for like one quick line by Nolan where he's basically like, yeah, she was cool. Sucks she died, innit? Anyway, moving on. But I really like how they flipped this dynamic here to be about Andressa instead of Debbie, because while I love Debbie, Oliver losing his birth mother and his home planet is something we just kind of gloss over in the comics. So I love how we get to see him dealing with that here. It further gives Oliver a bit more of his own character arc while also holding Nolan accountable. It also creates another great parallel between him and Mark, as this is nearly the exact conversation Mark had with Nolan when he first came to Thraxa and learned about Andressa and Oliver. It highlights how they've both been hurt in very much the same ways by Nolan and are both trying to find their own way to come to terms with it. We then get a sick-ass montage of Alan, Tech Jacket and Battle Beast turning the tide of the war for the Coalition, and just kicking ass all throughout the galaxy. If you want to get this song as well, this is Do You Feel Me by Oliver Tree. Here they're recapturing multiple territories from the Viltrumites while Oliver and Nolan continue eating space bugs and bonding, with Mark still dying off to the side as well. This pretty much all happens exactly the same way in the comics though, and we go back and forth between the panels showing each group's adventures. The desk is turning bluer as well, with more planets being liberated. Also want to mention this little added scene of Oliver and Nolan fishing, just because I thought it was fun and a good way of showing their relationship growing. There's also a moment where Oliver makes Nolan bleed, and it shows how he's getting stronger. And it's a great moment in the comics too. However, the father and son bonding stops when they hear Mark trying to speak, but realise he's just dreaming. which Omni-Man says is good news, as it means he'll probably wake up in the next couple of days. Oliver is a bit disappointed though, as he's finally come around to Nolan and is going to miss having some alone time with him. Oh. Leaving Nolan and Oliver to spend more quality time together, we then see General Krieg updating Thragg on the current status of the war. We can see that this has completely shifted and that the Viltrumites are now on the receiving end of the ass whooping. This is due to Alan and the others successfully liberating numerous planets under their control and hunting down Viltrumite soldiers. There's obviously clear allusions to Hitler as well, with this kind of being like that scene where he paws over the battle lines. Forgotten the movie's name, but something like Dung Tatang, fuck's sake. The Downfall, I think it's called. However, Thragg decides it's time to stop playing games and decides to just go after Thetis and launch an attack on Themyscira, which Craig definitely thinks is a bad idea, but he's too much of a pussy to stand up to Thragg. We then see Thragg talking to Argall's skull again, saying that he will finally be avenged. This framing comes directly from the comics, with the character's skull being placed exactly like this. And why don't you just fucking kiss him already, dude? Goddamn. We then get another scene of Oliver and Nolan bonding, where Oliver tells him about how he likes Earth, but doesn't really consider it home. He's a complete alien with no connection to the planet and feels different to everyone else, even Mark. We also get a little mention of the friends Oliver made back in season 3, but learn that he quickly outgrew them, which he probably means literally, as he aged like 5 years in a month. However, it also made me kinda sad. Oliver then gives a hilarious confession to Nolan that one time he was attracted to a lobster while at dinner with Debbie and Paul, and that it made him feel fuzzy. However, he still ate it. Damn, Oliver, you little freak, you like the deep. But yeah, I did tell you, to be fair, that he probably had the hots for that space bug, and now that theory is confirmed, I swear down. But yeah, this all comes directly from issue 74 and may or may not be one of the funniest moments for me in the comics, so I'm glad they kept it in. Damn girl, look at those big meaty claws. Once back at camp, they then find that Mark is gone and we see that he's wandered to Conquest's grave. I don't know if this was done on purpose, but it reminded me a lot of Jesus leaving his tomb on the 3rd day and then heading out by himself. Mark is somewhat the messianic figure of this story, and this could be seen as his resurrection from the brink of death. Ecstatic that his brother's alive, Oliver then rushes in to hug Mark. Mark is also super happy to see them, as he thought Conquest's grave was for them and that they died during the battle. This is when he learns that he's been out for the past 2 months, and we see that Mark was so out of it, he doesn't even remember killing Conquest, which we see he's kind of upset about, having once again given in to murder. But Nolan reminds him that this is war and that it's not over. But this moment brings the Invincible superfamily back together as they get ready to rejoin the fight. This is pretty much exactly the same as the comic, except Mark gets a bit more of a speech about not remembering killing Conquest and that he acted on instinct. We then see Thetis trying to calm down the other world leaders, who are growing concerned about this ongoing war. This is when Thragg launches his attack, and we see that Data number 2 has been the mole that Thetis has mentioned before. Who, if you didn't know, because even I had to look up his name, is this dude right here. He then lowers the shields though and lets the Viltrumite through Themyscira's defenses. And I apologise for how many times I butcher Themyscira. The Viltrumite ships then destroy Thetis' headquarters, but luckily everyone survives again and they see the Viltrumite fleet looming overhead. Also, quick note here, but in the comics, Thetis comes out of the rubble absolutely jacked, which I feel was a missed opportunity for a greater recreation of the shot here. It was just a big shock at the time of coming out and being massive. Like, it always made me laugh. It kind of reminds me of how Groundskeeper Willie's ripped to fuck whenever his clothes come off. I don't know why I remember that so well, but it's just buried in my brain. Fucking kill me. We then see the Viltrumites and their army descend on Themyscira, killing everyone in sight as Thragg watches in his warship. He's also keeping all Argall close by, with his skull watching Thragg as he oversees the attack. However, the heroes jump into action and Thetis starts beating the shit out of Krieg as Alan and Tech Jacket fight off the other Viltrumites and their alien army. You also get a Saving Private Ryan moment with Talia as she walks through the body parts of the civilians, and we see how many people the Viltrumites have already killed. They literally just got there and have already chopped through like a quarter of the city. This big battle happens pretty much the same in the comics, but is a bit longer in the show and much more spread out. This also further gives us a better sense of scale as to how massive this attack is. We then see Tech Jacket nearly get killed by Anissa when a blue and yellow blur comes out of nowhere and saves her. Look, can it be? It is up there. The Invincible boys. Cue superhero action shot. Invincible, Oliver and Omni-Man come in to save the day, and they start making their way through the Viltrumite alien soldiers. Nolan tells the boys not to kill them because they're slaves to the Viltrumites and will help them once they're freed, which was actually Mark's line in the comic. Feel like giving it to Nolan here though is really a really good choice, as it subtly plays in the redemption arc that he's been on in the show. kind of showcasing how he's truly changed. Season 1, 2, and probably Season 3 Omni-Man would not have given a single fuck about any of these soldiers and would have just flown right through them like them people on that train. We then see Mark looking over the battlefield as everyone fights their own little fights. This includes Theta snapping some dude's neck and Nolan rocking the shit out of Krieg. However, among all the chaos, Mark sees Thragg's warship is just shitting down lasers on the city and decimating their forces. Rain fire from Avengers Endgame type thing. So he calls Oliver over and the two of them fly headfirst right through the Viltrumite ship. This sends Thragg and his precious Argall skull tumbling out as he whines like a little baby. No, not the Argall skull. We then get an awesome shot of Mark and Oliver flying right through the other side of the ship as it explodes, which is ripped straight out the comics. I did also wonder if this moment was inspired by Captain Marvel in Endgame, as the shot of them flying up is similar to how she exits Thanos' ship. This all happens very fast in the comics with pretty much the same beats, however, we don't get this moment of Mark watching over the battle before going after Thragg's ship. In the comic, he just kinda tells Thetis, "Hold on a minute buddy, there's something I need to go do first before saving the city." He then takes Oliver up with him to the ship. Here though, we can see Mark is not just rushing in ass first to danger like the usual, but actually taking time to strategize a plan. This is a stark contrast to how Invincible usually operates, with him usually getting by getting the ever-loving crap beaten out of him first and then somehow coming out on top by the skin of his teeth. But now he's actually planning stuff. Holding his precious skull and without his ship, Thragg then looks around to see the Viltrumites getting their asses handed to them and calls for a retreat. This gives us another shot-for-shot pull from the comics as the Viltrumites fly into space. With the invasion now over though, the heroes are still left with the Viltrumites' giant warship, which was just destroyed and is now hurtling towards the planet's surface. Luckily though, everyone comes together to hold back the ship and the heroes hurl it back into space in a big epic superhero moment. The day is saved! Now while this does happen in the comics, it's not nearly as cool and only has Mark, Oliver, Thetis and Tech Jacket. Like, not the whole team, and it only takes up 3 small panels. I love how they brought everyone together here though to have a big moment working as a team, and it shows Invincible is a full-on hero again. I think that boy might just be alright after all. However, despite technically saving the day, we see that the city is still completely wrecked and is scattered with dead bodies. This gives us a moment to take a breath and realise just how terrible this attack actually was and how many people were killed while everyone was fighting their little superhero battles. The scene of the aftermath is new for the show too, and just another great example of how Kirkman really focuses on the consequences left behind from these massive events in the series. Here, they're really taking the time to show the emotional toll it has on the characters, which we didn't really have time for in the comics. It was just like, bam, Viltrumite attack, bam, let's go get him, bam, bam, punch, punch, explosion. Speaking of seeing how these things affect our characters, we then see Alan's absolutely devastated at the carnage all around him. But Thetis kind of doesn't give a shit. He says that it was war and just a minor setback and just proves that the Viltrumites are desperate and the coalition's still winning. But Alan is like, dude, are you fucking serious right now? However, before you can question him further, they're interrupted by Talia, who's discovered someone in their network shut down their defense system, which they quickly assume is Data Number 1. They see him hobbling around in the background and Alan grabs him by the throat and starts interrogating him. However, Data Number 1 has no idea what they're talking about and they see Data Number 2 scurrying away, which is when he's shot in the head by Data Number 1. He screams at him about how they joined the coalition together and that he can't believe he would betray them. However, Data Number 2 is somehow still alive with a massive hole in his head and he spills the beans on Thragg's plans. He reveals he's calling all the Viltrumites from across the galaxy back to planet Viltrum to regroup and launch another attack, which shocked everyone except Thetis. He's actually kind of psyched and says that means it's the perfect opportunity for them to strike first before their reinforcements arrive. We then end with Thetis declaring that they're headed to planet Viltrum to end this once and for all. This again all happens pretty much the same way in the comic, except for Thetis being a complete arsehole. I mean, seriously, what was that guy's deal? But yeah, that's it for episode 6 of Invincible. And oh my god, that was great. Oh wait, what the hell is that? No! No way! As the credits start to roll, we cut back to Conquest's gravesite on the bug planet as sinister music plays, and we close in on his grave before cutting back to the desert and hearing the silence of the wind blowing. Fucking hell, guys, I'll be honest, I really thought for a second that they were making some massive change from the comics and bringing Conquest back. But I love how the show did this purely just to fuck with us, and you know what? I respect the hell out of it. But yeah, pack your bags, kids, we are going to planet Viltrum. Now this was another absolutely insane episode of Invincible after the previous most insane episode of the series last week. Besides all the cool superhero stuff though, I love the character development we get here with Nolan and Oliver, and seeing them both work through their own issues and come together while caring for Mark. Chef's kiss. It revealed a lot about how both of them have changed for the better because of what Mark's told them. It was also just so cool seeing this big battle against the Viltrumites in action, as it pulls a lot more of the scenes directly from the comics, but still made me feel like I was kind of seeing it for the first time. But with only 2 episodes left of the season, I can only imagine how the series is going to make what comes next even more batshit insane than the comics and prepare us for some even crazier stuff in season 5. But yeah, that's another video done. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts below, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of our Invincible Season 4 breakdowns. If you want to follow us on Instagram as well and keep up to date with what we're doing, then make sure that you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Also, huge shout outs to our researcher TJ for all his work getting together the notes and images for this video, and shout out to John for doing the edit as well. Did you know that members of the channel also get early access to videos like this every single week, and if you click the join button you get at least 1 breakdown a week before anyone else for just 99 cents a month and less than $12 a year. What, Paul? You get massive long breakdowns that cheap? I cannot believe it. What do you mean I'm already paying for 50,000 different streaming services? I can't believe it. Fuck your membership program, Paul, is what I've got to say. What did you mean by that when you said it? Well, you better prove me wrong and sign up. But yeah, if not, thank you for sitting through this video. I've been your host, Paul. You've been the best, and as always, I will see you later. Out of the way though, thank you for sitting through this one. You take care. Peace.